Mr. Saintontas.
MrPokke, how are you doing today?
How are you doing today? I'm doing great. I just finished up the story. What have you been up to cover this?
I've been going to war, going to battle with a couple of websites. It's been a good bit of
What
fun.
do you mean go to war?
Going to war with websites to me is fine, right? Because it's not like you're targeting people or you're not targeting like ideas or making them feel bad. You're going after like big corpa, right? And everyone's down to go after big corpa.
Is it a Hoyoshills website or is it like it's just a general website?
I'm not entirely sure, man, right? It's just, I mean, which one do you want to talk about? I think there are a couple that are, kind of Hoyo-pilled, while others, might be just, it might be other issues.
You can start with the most recent one, or like the one that's like you think the most interesting is.
The one that's the most interesting. The other two are like kind of related, like gacha revenue and gacha gaming. So I guess we might as well just talk about Prydwen, right?
I saw this one tweet about from Kate's. I think you mentioned that they were like promoting a leakers content creator for like
yeah,
that's the only thing I knew about. Yeah, what's up?
You're about to open Pandora's box though, buddy. I guess it's Prydwen's box at this point. When it comes to the WuWa section of the Prydwen website, there is a lot of stuff, right, that's either outdated, a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily right, and a lot of stuff that, at least at this point in the game, is misinformative. Compared to like what the state of the actual meta, what the state of the actual characters and like power levels are.
Are you talking about a tier list or like which one are you referring to?
I mean, there's a lot of things, right? It's the tier list, it's the character guides, it's even like the builds and like equipment for the characters. It like almost every single part of the website, even the skill descriptions themselves, right? Every single part of the website that you can like click around and get to, it feels like there is something wrong with at least one part of everything. Maybe it's like an 80-95% good, but there's like 10% of just like a poo stain on every part of the website.
Do you have like a specific example? Like
let's go to Gian.
Like,
let's go to Gian. Go to his build. Look at the second weapon on there.
Ages of Harvest.
Look how there's not a description for it when every other weapon does. And this is like a 2-sentence, like a paragraph worth of words. Any person that actually knows how to play this game or has played this game, right? It would take you quite literally about less than 5 minutes to write this. And it's been like this for several months.
So this thing has
and I see people saying like, wow, no description. But
wait,
like,
so this
guys,
thing...
it's literally so easy to put this in.
Shut the fuck up, chat. Oh my god, let the man speak. Okay, anyways, this thing has been a recommendation for the past couple of months. And then basically there's been no description for like the whole month.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you scroll up even more, you're going to see that it's updated for patch 1.3 below the introduction, right? In update tracker, it says updated for patch 1.3. And the thing is, right, Jinxi's weapon was released in 1.1. Gian had a rerun in 1.3, right? And then we're over here and we can't spend 5 minutes to write 2 sentences.
So basically this thing should have gotten a quick little description since it is meant to be updated with Jinxi's thingy.
Exactly, right? And you're saying that it's updated for 1.3 when it's clearly not, right? You're just lying. Right, at this point it's just lying, right? It's updated for 1.3, but we're not writing, we're not even putting in the bare minimum to write a goddamn paragraph about a weapon, right?
Okay, but technically they
gets
did
worse,
have
though. It
the
gets worse.
numbers though. So technically if people just want to like at one glance, like they can just see the numbers if that's the...
But the thing is, you play the game differently with this weapon, or you don't necessarily play it differently, but there are different strengths that get emphasized more with this weapon, at least when you're playing Gian, right?
So
and
like you would change his rotations, like instead of using skill heavy, heavy.
Yeah, you try to make sure you're doing 2 skills in each rotation, and it gets a lot stronger, right, with his first sequence node.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So it's just things like that, like you would want to mention, right, that his S1 makes this weapon a lot stronger or more effective on him, right? But it's just over here, right? Like we just don't give a shit about the character, or we don't give a shit about this section of the website, right? And so we can't put in 5 minutes to write about it.
Okay, I see.
It gets worse though. It gets worse. It gets worse than this actually. Oh gosh, you probably visited this website as much as the Prydwen devs with how hard it is to navigate. This is a rotation from the closed beta test. This was established 2 or 3 months before the game was released.
Oh, so like you couldn't, it's not meant for you to swap, because if you swap, you lose all the buffs, right?
No, you do swap, right? But the actual on-field rotation, you're gonna notice that you're just holding down the basic attack button during his liberation, right? It says P1, P2, P3, and you're getting off 6 attacks. right?
Okay.
When you play this character after version 1.0, it was pretty common knowledge that you're able to get out 8 attacks if you throw in a dodge cancel at the end of each attack.
Ooh,
right?
that's huge. That's huge, yeah.
We literally cannot update it in 7 months.
What if they just didn't know? Like, what if they just don't really have like a experienced theory crafter for like the Prydwen section?
Then why are we saying it's updated for version 1.3?
You can still use this rotation, like even if you don't min-max, it technically still works.
I have a VOD comparing the 2 rotations. It's quite literally a 15 to 20% damage increase using
that's
another
huge.
rotation.
That's huge,
It's
that's huge.
it's the difference between shaving like 20 to 30 seconds off your Tower of Adversity clear.
Do you know who like works on these websites? Since I'm assuming that you are like attacking
Only
them.
God does
Oh, okay.
at this point.
Now, how do you find out about the promoting leakers thingy?
I think the whole promoting leakers thing, in my opinion, is really similar, right? To just the level of quality and the level of effort that you're seeing across the entire website, right? If you go to tier list and then the latest updates, you're going to notice that the last person on there, right? You probably saw the tweet, right? The last person on there is actively leaking the kits of Carlotta and Roshia. Right?
Okay,
going through how they play, going through their numbers, blah, blah, blah. Let's just say you're whoever's writing this changelog, right? I imagine it wouldn't take that much effort to go onto the CC's channels that you are crediting here and that you are advertising and that you are giving thanks to and recognize, right, that these guys are actively leaking content for the game. And maybe in your infinite wisdom, as you're writing this out, you would not put them on it, right? Because I don't think you would want to be somebody, right? Or a guide website, right? A guide resource for the player base, right? That is supporting leaks.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree. Is it like a recent thing, or like has been covering leaks since like day one?
They have been covering leaks, I believe, since Camellia, right? So this isn't like, oh, like, you know, Prydwen advertised them and then it was like, oh, yeah, you know what? I got some airtime. Let me drop some leaks. It wasn't like that, right? It's not like they sandbagged Prydwen. They have been in known leakers since Camellia for sure. I'm not sure about Shorekeeper, but, you know, obviously Camellia was, you know, her leaks came out like months ago on YouTube, right? So you would know that he's a leaker. It would have taken so little time to just do the due diligence to identify, right? Maybe we shouldn't do this, right? And that level of, or I guess that lack of care, right? Or that lack of commitment, or just simply lack of common sense is apparent everywhere across the entire website.
For Wuthering Wave section, or like you're talking about like the entire private?
The entire, I mean, I've only looked at the Wuthering Wave section, right? Because I am the #1 Kuro bot, right? It's the only game I play currently.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the only game I play currently, right? Probably just like how you only have the HSR section.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I only really visit the HSR. Yeah, most of the time. Absolutely.
Exactly, right? So I don't really know what is going on across the other areas, but I have heard in my comment section, right, that stuff is, you know, a little bit shitty in a lot of places. So it might just be like, oh gosh, like we are so undermanned that we're just like putting in, you know, 10 minutes worth of effort on like every page and we're not like double checking stuff. But you know, we're presenting ourselves as a reputable guide source, right, to the player base. And I think this is like, you know, this might be like a CC brain thing in particular, but people are looking at this website, digesting the information on it, and then they are like parroting what's on this website across, you know, YouTube comment sections, across Reddit, across social media, blah, blah, blah. And if some of the information is wrong or incorrect, then that information getting parroted is just bad, right? And now we have people basically, you know, making content, you know, giving advice, and now they're getting gaslit because of this website that doesn't know what they're talking about, frankly.
You have your comment section saying, oh, but Prydwen said this, therefore you are wrong. Because like Prydwen
exactly, right? And they use Prydwen as like a source for their claims. If we're using a Gion rotation from the closed beta test and then saying we've updated it for patch 1.3, right? Guys, what can we trust on this website? Why are we getting people gaslighting us in the comment section using this website?
I feel like this Prydwen sentiment thing when it comes to what information is getting, you know, distributed to the community, I don't think it's strictly for Wuthering Waves. I think Prydwen also has, they are not strangers to especially pertaining to communities who are like very involved in the game. I think, for example, in Honky Starbucks, especially when it comes to like tier list updates in like Honky Starbucks, I think there has been a lot of like some interesting sentiments. Like for example, there's this unit called Dr. Ratio, which is free, and he was like in tier 0 for like a very, very long time, and I think they didn't update it. So I think it's not really something new that players who play that game for like a really long time, they kind of know what is like a more optimal like build or version or tier list or whatever compared to what Prime offers. But on the flip side, I feel that if it comes to just general information, like I think that actual casuals who actually use Prydwen, they probably just go here and just see what their kid does. So like see what that I basically I did use Warring Waves when Warring Waves launched. I used Prydwen quite a bit. I basically just go here and just read what they do. So maybe for the more, because these are all objective truths, right? You don't really change this. It's as long,
this is just copy and pasted right
yeah,
from the game.
So like for like things like reviews, for like more like subjective things like their perfect rotations, their best team comps, or even their tier list, I think this will always depend on like how deep you are into how locked in you are to that game or the genre, because I think you will always somehow find ways to optimize that gameplay beyond what Prydwen's offering. I don't think they are probably deserving to get like, okay, why are you trying to expect out of Prydwen? Like, are you trying to make them go EOS, or like, oh my god, down with Prydwen, or like, what are we trying to look out of this? Yeah.
The goal is to not make them go EOS. The goal is to get them to actually give a shit about this page.
Okay.
Right? That's the thing, right? When you have all of these small little things everywhere, right? Like no weapon on Jian, no, an rotation from CBT. We're missing tags on characters when they serve like roles. Like Spectro Rover, right, is a team healer, and then they're over here and they only have like one damage tag. They don't have any healing tag. And then there are other characters that have a shield, and then they don't have the shield tag, right? You have Spectro Rover and Yan Wu. They're not tagged with heal or shield when it's literally like in their kits, and we're putting this little effort into the tags, right? We're putting this little effort into like actually categorizing the characters. Like Encore over here is pretty liberation reliant, right? She doesn't have the ult tag. It's just like, what kind of information are people actually getting out of this? There is so much to just mislead people from this tier list. Like, guys, if we go to the hybrid section, this just means that all of these characters, Chang Li, Mortefi, Yinlin, and Jeja, are worse than Sanhua. The role is called hybrid, right? It's called sub, or it includes sub DPS characters. You're supposed to do damage. And Sanhua, relative to these other 4 characters, does not do any fucking damage. The entire tier list in general just seems like so biased and like just doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's just like, what is going, like, if we're looking at hybrid, right, we're looking at their damage potential. Sanhua doesn't fucking do damage, and so it's like, what are we actually waiting here? Just call it like buffer, right? If you're not incorporating their damage into the value at all.
Yeah, it should be support.
So
right?
it's just
then
yeah. It's just like, what the fuck is the point of these categories, right? If you're putting somebody that contributes like 2% of the team's damage of the team's overall damage per rotation as like tier 0, right? Just because they're fast on Concerto or their rotations are fast. Right, we're just discounting the damage part completely. People are perpetuating this whole like Sanhua, oh my gosh, she's so good, oh my god, the best tier 0 character, because of how their DPS calculations work. Prydwen takes the total damage that a character does and divides it by their fucking field time.
Wait, should I be concerned? Is that bad?
That is so bad.
Oh,
because
shit.
now you have people saying that Sanhua's over here doing 50k DPS when she does 100,000 damage in a 20-second rotation.
Ooh, yeah, that's really, really bad.
And people are saying,
But she does 50k DPS, bro.
Okay, it's like, it's not 50k per second. It's just like over the course of the entire 20 seconds. It's like that's her total damage.
Yeah, she does 100k over 20 seconds, right?
Okay,
and
yep,
if you played the game a single time, you would know that is no fucking damage. You could just take your Sanhua, take all of her gear off, right? Go naked Sanhua, naked Moonlit Sanhua on Overture, and you will have almost the same fucking clear time. Your clear time is going to differentiate more based off of whether or not Camellia crits. Camellia's crits are going to have a bigger impact than Sanhua having gear.
So she's really just there for you to spam your intro, outro, and console then.
Yeah. Right, and that's what's being overvalued here, right? Because we're talking about hybrid, right? We're talking about the definition of like, hybrid character buffs and does damage, but we're just ignoring the damage part with Sanhua because she doesn't fucking do damage.
But I feel like at the end of the day, like these kind of tier list things, it's either we can help contribute towards the tier list, or like it's always gonna be a very subjective thing. And there's not a lot of things. Will you be down to like go and help them? Like, cause I don't really know if they are gonna be, receiving any help from like more experienced like Warring Wave players such as yourself, Because I think
this is the
their
thing,
list
right?
Yeah, their list is like Gajah's Mag and I'm Riveners.
So that's the funny thing with I Am Rivenous, right? They've got this guy credited on the very front page as like, kind of like, he almost looks like an owner of the tier list. Guys, He hasn't made a Wuthering Waves video in 4 months. And this is the person we have linked on the front page of this tier list.
I think they probably made this at like the launch of Wuthering Waves, because I think at the launch a lot of content creators made like a shit ton of content for them. But I think it's kind of just trickled down. Like the number of content creators that are making content for WuWa probably just like slowed down by quite a bit. but I don't think they.
And
they
I have,
managed to
I have an
reflect
interesting theory on that. It was in one of my comments. The theory is that the minimum skill floor to be taken seriously as a WuWa guide creator is so high that a lot of CCs didn't want to put in the effort to do it.
Do you have like an example? Like
I
Rexland?
think I'm
like
talking
Rexland-
to him right now. I think I'm talking to him right now.
Wait, what do you mean? Wait, I'm just a tourist. Wait, I'm like that completely flew by. I have no idea what I'm saying.
I think your chat does though.
Chat, what is he saying? Chat just spamming COD. They're not helping. Wait. I legitimately missed it.
So I'll explain it again because
Okay,
chat's
okay.
just gonna be spamming. Basically, one of the theories in my YouTube comments was that a lot of content creators kind of like drop the game because the minimum skill floor, right, to be taken seriously, right, because you can't like suck balls at the game and try to make guides, otherwise people are gonna be like, why would I listen to somebody that can't play the game, right? The skill floor was like so high that a lot of CCs either weren't able to get there or had to invest too much time, right, to be taken seriously. And so they just quit the
Absolutely.
game or stopped making content on the game. You asked for examples, and then I said,
So it's
I think
as in, you can elaborate on it. I'm chilling.
it was more of a joke. It was
No.
more of a joke.
No.
It's like when I had to
Absolutely.
explain it out, it's not as funny anymore.
Because I legitimately just completely missed it. I think you make sense though. I think for content creators, it's probably got to be worth their time to stick to a game where their
Exactly.
channel can still, because they're living and all that kind of stuff, right? So either they lost interest or it takes way too much time to deem it of a, relevant effort. Then I think they start to, stop carving that specific game over time.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And I'm not gonna lie, right? There's a reason why people say it's like either the best combat or it's also like, one of the more like complex combats. It's not easy to like pick up on the go, right? I'm still learning new stuff in my rotations and like learning new optimizations every single day
Yeah,
at this point. And I've been playing it daily, right? There's a lot of gaps in your performance and a lot of gaps in your results based off of what you're actually doing on the field. Because like just following a set rotation guide isn't going to get the same results for every single person. It has to be, is the juice worth the squeeze in a situation like this? And it did feel like a couple of content, for like content creators, right? I don't think the squeeze or the juice was worth that squeeze or all that effort that you had to put in to like have that baseline level of skill in the game.
Who would you say are like content creators who are like worthy of that skill cap to be like continuing making guides for Water Waves?
Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question, brother, man. It's basically like whoever I don't say is like I'm talking shit about them.
Okay, maybe not, but like whoever you say is that they're really, really good. I mean, I only know Rexton because like, he literally is just so good again, but I don't really know anyone else that much.
Yeah, I mean, Rexlet is obviously like kind of known as like the god gamer in the space, but he doesn't upload as frequently, and he kind of like he does like kind of jump around to a lot of different genres. Like I think he's doing like some girls frontline. He was a big Coom break player.
Absolutely,
for a while, and it's kind of like stuff like that. So I don't think he has like the consistent level of like uploads that would like make him kind of like that go-to guide maker or that
him
go-to
in the
gameplay
Water Waves
person.
community.
Yeah, he's kind of like Faker in retirement, right? Comes back every once in a while, does like a show match, but he isn't like regularly making content on the game, right? That's kind of like what it feels like to me.
So who would you say is like still in it? Like not a tourist, not a retirement, like legit, like this is it.
I think one of the CCs who has like a very like well-rounded view of the game, but is a lot more, I guess, like technical and kind of like understanding her content can be a bit more complex is Maggie.
Oh,
she
the
is
VTuber?
a very big.
Oh, so she's really funny.
Yeah. She's a very big like T-seer. She has, I think, one of the most like comprehensive spreadsheets for the game. But to understand and to like get the most out of her content, you have to be good at the game. She puts in very spicy rotations into her videos. Takes a lot of practice to get them done. If you don't meet like a minimum skill level or like investment level, then like a lot of her findings might not be applicable to the general player base. Right. So I kind of view her as a bit more of like an advanced techniques, like advanced information sort of creator.
The advanced class after the tutorial class.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
let's just be honest, right? Spreadsheets overall are kind of unapproachable. In a sense, for a good portion of the player base,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Especially ones where you have a lot of different inputs, you have a lot of different variable ways to like adjust your subs and stuff like that. And it can be like a lot for somebody who's either like new to the game or even like an intermediate, beginning player, right? To be able to absorb and actually get value out of it, right? It's just like, a lot of people aren't like spreadsheets or numbers oriented. And what that means, right, is that a lot of her content can feel very technical, right? And it's almost like, like it's kind of hard for me to understand this and actually apply this to the game. Another big thing about that is, I've been on call with like a couple other CCs talking about it, but like it's very hard to take sheet calcs in this game and apply it to actual gameplay. You're doing these attacks in an order, you're putting in all this stuff, you're like measuring out the concerto gain and making sure that you're swapping to characters at different points in time. But then you have the dynamic, right, of bosses attacking you or enemies attacking you, right? And you gain concerto when you dodge, right? You get extra stuff when you parry, stuff like that, right? And the fact that you gain concerto when you dodge just throws all of that rotation stuff out the window in a sense, right? All your timings are different. It's now dependent on what the enemy is doing, right? Your rotation speed is affected by what the enemies are doing.
Absolutely. So they like serve like almost like no purpose because like, it's almost impossible to replicate them in the real world.
Unless the boss is literally not doing anything for the first 10 seconds of the fight. There are some bosses that do that, right? They'll just sit there and not do anything for like the first 10 seconds. But then there are bosses that will, in the first second, throw an attack at you, right? Like Scar or the Fallacy. And so it's like you're dodging immediately right off the rip, you're dodging, and then all of your rotation timings are different because of that.
What do you think about Gatekeeping? Because I think he's the only other creator that I'm like kind of close with because he plays a lot, and he also does Warring Waves. So yeah,
I feel like Gatekeeping is a gamer, right?
Yep.
Gatekeeping, I feel like at his core is a gamer. I've seen a bit of his gameplay footage, and he knows how to play the game. He has like a couple hologram clears where he just goes and fights one, right? And it's literally just like half of the videos. The video just starts off with him like starting the fight. When it comes to his content, right, is that people can take him pretty seriously, right? Because he knows how to actually dodge. He knows how to like work between these characters. He's oftentimes one of those people that will go for like underused or like off meta combinations. He's done stuff like Tao Chi, right, with Chang Li, with like some quick swaps in between, right? Because that's not really like a character, right, that a lot of people are trying to prioritize or a lot of people are trying to work around, right? But he's thinking outside of the box to actually make team comps like that happen. To me, him having like that kind of freedom with his content, right, that willingness to go ahead and experiment and even upload that content, right, is something that I really respect. But one thing I won't respect about Smack is his Camellia. I believe she has like a 90% crit rate, and that overcaps with Shorekeeper. So definitely there needs to be some work done on his Camellia for sure. I think it only has like 240% crit damage as well. So I'll talk all the shit I can about his Camellia stats. That is like the one thing that is unacceptable about his content.
Absolutely. Just how can you have bad relics as a guide maker? Just no way.
Yeah. Bad relics as a guide maker means that you cannot, you can't be taken seriously in content, right? Like, right? Then that we established that a couple of months ago in HSR, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just yeah. If your Bronya is not 175, go fuck yourself, right? Absolutely. I kind of wanna circle back a little bit. You mentioned something about the whole skill cap thing, and I guess like they are not like qualified enough to make guides for Warring Waves. Why do you think that is? For the community to deem it this way. Like if you're not like that good at the game, you shouldn't be making content for Warring Waves.
If you're not like kind of like deep into the mechanics of the game, if you're not deep into like how these characters work, how they rotate, when like certain swap timings are, you're not able to recognize the potential on the roster. What that means, right, is that you're not able to fully capitalize on a character's strengths. And because you're not recognizing them, you're not going to factor that in either in their rankings, in their guides, or, like their rotations or like overall gameplay. What that also means is that you're also not able to identify when things are either like way harder or like way more difficult or unachievable for, maybe the average player or lesser skilled players, right? Because every person playing this game, right, isn't going to be like Rexlin. Right, they're not going to be somebody that's going to be, that's going to be doing like no-hit runs. That's going to be like, solo hologramming, right? There's going to be people from all sides of the spectrum, right? And when you are an expert or, you're somebody that knows a lot about the game, you're able to identify like what is going to be hard, what's going to be easier for people across, I want to say spectrum, but then that's going to mean something else. Like, across like that spectrum of skill that players have. Having that knowledge is really important, right? So that you can give advice that's actually good, right? That's actually relatable.
I feel like I had this very similar thinking like for HSR like way back, which is a lot about, okay, I guess in like Zenless or HSR, if you want to like min-max, it's like the equivalent of like a zero cycle of like Zenless, you like clear super fast or like the absolute best rotations, and then you want to make that into a content, it definitely shows that you know a lot about the game compared to if you just want to do like a 3-star clear, which is like relatively easy for a lot of players. But wouldn't you say having this Okay, or rather, would you say that having this mindset where like you have to be an expert and you need to know the ins and outs of like everything for a unit, do you think that will like kind of negatively affect the community playing the game? Wuthering Waves was kind of made out to be a game where I think they advertised it to be kind of like Genshin, right? Like it's an open world gacha game, but there was a lot more depth. You could do a lot of like fancy stuff. You could do like, a lot of like this kind of rotations, dodge cancelling, parry, all kind of stuff. So it makes it feel like there's a lot more skill based. But on the flip side, it makes it such that players who play Wuthering Waves, if you do not get on that level of expertise, this is me personally anyways, I feel that the community itself that actually plays Wuthering Waves, they start to feel like, oh my god, how can you not know this? You're so bad. And this is like, I feel like it's a lot more prevalent in the WuWa community pertaining gameplay for WuWa. It's like, oh, you should new match, and because from the start they are advertising it as like a more advanced, quote unquote advanced Genshin Impact. So because you are not able to get to that quote unquote caliber of skills, it can get a little bit nasty. And I'm not too sure if that's gonna be too good, because I wouldn't say I quit, but I haven't played the game that much ever since like I'm gonna like Changli. And then I recently just came back. I don't know what the hell am I doing with Camellia. I legit just watched like a 5-minute. I watched Gacha Smack the guy on Camellia, and I was just like quite literally just randomly pressing buttons. And it technically still gave me like fulfillment and joy where I cleared the content. And it wasn't all that about I'm one to execute everything perfectly. I saw her animations, it was great, it was very comfortable, and I cleared it. So that is why I think there's like a bit of a gap between like the hardcore and like the less hardcore players in WuWa.
I think it truly depends on the type of content that you are pushing and creating about the game. If you're like a commentary sort of CC who's just talking about, you know, like what's going on in the space, you know, new updates that are coming out, you know, like lore, character designs, blah blah blah. Think like, you know, the like Ashikai and Genshin, right?
Yep.
It's like, I don't think people give a shit about like how good you are at the game. I don't think people care like what your TOA clears look like, if that's like the area that you're focusing on. But I think when it comes to you, Pokke, considering like your history in HSR and your history in some other games, right? You kind of have like a reputation, right? For providing like information, for providing advice on how to like do certain things. And so I guess the expectation for, I guess, and obviously, right, I don't know how people actually feel. The expectation, in my belief, right, when you came to WuWa, was that you would have like the skill level to justify having advice, right? Or giving advice. You did like a couple of like guides for WuWa, right? In a sense.
I did a lot at the start because I was really like quite heavily invested in WuWa at the start. But eventually kind of just like, if I wouldn't say it fell off, like, oh my god, I suddenly hated the game. It's just like, it couldn't really grab me. It's also why Genshin couldn't really grab me, because the whole open world game just didn't really click with me that well. But that's just me personally. So I did the start thing.
I thought you loved Genshin Impact.
Well, who the fuck? Tectone? No, as in, I like the game. I had to play, but it's probably not like a game that I would say is my main game. I think HSR is like my quote unquote main game. Is like if I was gonna be like a gacha tourist, like all these games are like vacations. I'll go on vacations. I'll go and see, oh, a new game launch. I'm gonna spend like 1 week there and then play. But I kind of always go back to my home country, quote unquote, like HSR. So that's like the way I'm approaching the content. Same thing for WuWa. Same thing. I don't even think I upload like Genshin content for like a long time. So nowadays it's mainly just HSR. But yeah.
Let's just say you're in university, right? And you're taking a class on something like woodworking, right? And then the teacher comes up and they don't know how to woodwork. Would you go to that class, or would you rate that class highly?
I would say it's probably not so much the teacher doesn't know how to woodwork. It's probably like the teacher doesn't know, he's not a PhD mastery black belt woodworker. I think that's like the way you're putting it.
But you were doing like Apex level content in a sense, right? You're doing like 0 cycle clears. You're like, ooh, here's the meta, guys, right? And then like, you know, you're doing all that stuff for HSR. And I feel like in a sense, right, some of your earlier WuWa content was kind of geared in that same way, right? And it's like, I guess there's not as much value, or there's not as much like weight put on that kind of teaching or that kind of content when you're, you know, not performing at that level in game. And I'm not saying that you didn't do that, but I did hear you struggled with backflips for a while.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if
oh my god, it was so hard. It was so hard, man. But I eventually got it. But yeah, backflips, the bane of my existence. You know, I almost killed myself over that in game. Yeah.
I'm sorry to still give you shit about that.
Yeah,
but
I mean, it's funny. It's a funny experience of my life. Absolutely.
I guess that's the sort of thing, right? It's just like, like, is this guy like a trusted resource for like how to play the game when I guess all signs are pointing the other way?
Would doing backflips affect which banner to pull, or like how would they work in a team?
Well, I guess it's like this, right? Is I don't necessarily think your ability to perform backflips like affects like your judgment on like, you know, like banners, blah blah blah, stuff like that. But that's the thing, right? It's like, how good are you at identifying that value? How accurate are your conclusions if you can't do backflips?
I mean, it's very
Right,
simple. I
like-
read Chinese. That's my value, bro. That's literally how I did it for one wave. I read Chinese.
Your value is the translations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My value
that's
is
the
the ability
thing,
to read
right?
Chinese. And if
That's the
I
thing.
can't read Chinese, then, like, won't bother me. That's what it is. So,
My opinion is that when it comes to your HSR, like your CN HSR translations, right? If you look at the CN gameplay, I think that you can mimic the CN gameplay, right? For your
Absolutely.
HSR stuff. But then you have the WuWa CN stuff, right? Can you mimic the WuWa CN gameplay?
yeah, see, I don't really make WuWa's quote unquote zero cycle content though. Because I made like a shit ton of goddamn WuWa videos at the end of the start game. Like a whole lot of like 79 warring videos all the way from the start. So I would feel that almost everything here, it is almost just direct translations of like pools, the ecosystem. It's like really quite objective stuff at the start. Like how does it work? Trying out a new Genshin killer, insane, pulling the game, the tier list reactions, 10 things that changes, and then my first impressions. I don't really clear zero cycles, or do I try to pretend to be a guy that do zero cycle, quote unquote zero cycles in warring waves? Because one of them are just quite literally just me playing and enjoying the game. I spend 24 hours building a rover, and then just translate the guys I have. Then eventually, I kind of fell out of it because I realized that the whole open world gacha gameplay, I don't really like it as much. Comment Hongai style, you know? So
You like more like instant sort of like
yeah,
stuff
so
like
I don't
that.
really think
Like,
it's
kinda
that fair.
like rapid fire, like, you know, gotta.
Yeah, absolutely. Like whatever I stream is the content that goes on my YouTube. So it's like as long as streamable content is like good content for me. So I think it's a little bit. I don't really think it makes a lot of connection whether I can do backflips to determine if this cements my value as like a top tier warring waves player. Because I don't think I try to pretend to be a top tier warring waves player.
I feel like one of the great things that you do when it comes to your like kind of like CN translation content in HSR is like your ability to like give input based off of your own gameplay experiences, and then, you know, kind of like add onto those conclusions, right, that the CN players are making, right? You don't just directly translate, you add some additional value on top
Yeah,
of
of course,
it, right,
I know.
from your
Yep.
personal. Exactly, right. And the thing is, that kind of additional input, that personal sort of you know, anecdotal knowledge, right, that you're giving
Yep.
to your audience, I think that is extremely valuable, right?
Okay.
And the thing is, that anecdotal knowledge is directly linked to how good you are at the game, right? The value of that anecdotal knowledge.
I feel like it might be a little bit of a different thing for like some very specific things. For example, if I want to give a guide to a guy that doesn't care about zero cycles, I wouldn't really give a shit about giving them content that's related to zero cycles for HSR perspective. For example, if in Warring Waves, I'm not really aiming that content to be what's a zero cycle equivalent in Warring Waves. I actually have no idea.
Sub 1 minute clear.
I don't think that not providing any context or like not understanding doing a 1 minute clear would take away the stuff that actually happens in that CN guide, because I still understand what the CN guide is trying to say and how it can be applied to the actual combat of the game. But once again, I think this is legit like all the way back at the start of Warring Waves, where I would say I definitely have a lot more passion for the game itself compared to nowadays.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, right, there's content like tier lists, there's content like guides, there's content on like, you know, how to get the most value, who's the most valuable, right? And the idea, I think, across a lot of the player base, right, is that the person that has reached kind of like the apex of the game, that has proven to a degree, right, that they know how to get a lot out of these characters, they know how to get the most mileage possible, you value that opinion, you value that thought a lot more, right? Because this is like the highest level sort of player who has, you know, in a sense, right, they know what to do with all of these different characters. And so when you're commenting on a tier list, right, when you're commenting on placements, when you're making a definition for why something on the tier list is wrong or why something is right and how you would like move it somewhere or to like a different place based off of your personal opinion, right? That knowledge of the game from playing it, right, is factoring into those opinions. And when somebody knows how to do everything in the game, when somebody knows how to play exceptionally well, you value that thought a lot more. And if somebody either isn't uploading, you know, content like that, or they aren't known in the community as being capable of that, it's harder to take their input more seriously, or it's harder to like find value in that input, right? If like somebody's over here, right, getting like hit like 5 times in a rotation, right, and then like they're getting it out like 2 times slower than like other people, right? Because they're like getting staggered, they're not like doing the dodges, blah, blah, blah. Then how are they giving input on like optimal rotations? Their gameplay is entirely different from somebody else that's, you know, doing the dodges, that's doing the parries, that's doing all, you know, that's doing the echo swap cancels and stuff like that. And the thing is, everybody went on that journey to get there, right? From the start of the game, right? People weren't doing swap cancels. People weren't being like, you know, absolute freaks on the battlefield, right? On launch. And so somebody going through that journey to get to, again, like the apex means that they understand where the struggles are, what is difficult, and what to do to conquer them. Because they have gone through the struggles and done them themselves, that means that they're in a better position, right, to give advice to people to do the exact same thing. The goal of every player is to get better at the game.
I think that's a little bit subjective. Some people just want to stare at Camilla's tits or whatever, but yeah, I agree. Some people want to get better.
There's a decent set of the population, at least, that wants to get better at the game that they're playing. I think that's fair to say.
I find it a little bit hard for me to agree with this stance, because I feel like this is a little bit bad for like the whole mindset, because it almost sounds, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost sounds as if it's like you're gatekeeping content creators for making content for Warring Waves because they are not quote unquote at the apex tier. It might be relevant for content that is related to, okay, here's how you do a 30 cycle TOA clear from me, the apex player that know how to do 30-second clears. Or like, here's the tier list and here's the secret sauce, the secret rotations to make them perform the best of capabilities, and therefore this is why I think this creator is better than the other creators. But this will also drive away other contents that are not based off of being the apex of the apex. If I were to put this in HSR terms, it's like, if you can't do a 0 cycle, you shouldn't make content in Honkai Star Rail because you don't know speed tuning, you don't have the best units, your relics are dog shit, and therefore you shouldn't make content. Where there's like a lot of like other ways that they can still do guides. Like for example, okay, I don't want to name names, but like, holy shit, have you seen Gajasman's goddamn account create? Okay, but yeah, his account is maybe not the best, but I think he still makes a lot of interesting content that doesn't force him to be like the best of the best or like know all the speed tuning, because he can still make content that's quote unquote valuable to a viewer, whether be it HSR or Warring Waves. Maybe they're not trying to do a 30-second or 45-second or like the absolute best rotation. They just want to do a 30 out of 30 Tower of Velocity. The guide maker might not be the apex level, but if they can still present a guide in a way that is like digestible and like people can just pick it up and just like actually use it to their own accounts and get their clears, I think that shouldn't prevent them from making content for Warring Waves just because they're not quote unquote the apex. I think this mindset they have, I kind of saw it in my own chat. This is so random, but like my community is like 84 223 or something, which is like 234 or whatever. And like, I think for Warring Waves specifically, I get a lot more people with the whole elitist mindset, like, oh my god, you don't have these stats, or like, oh, you can't clear this in this rotation, you're so bad, compared to other games. And I think this mindset might be part of a cause.
You're saying that Gotcha Smack isn't at the apex level in Honkai Star Rail? Is that the first thing we want to go over?
He's absolutely apex. Heyo, Gotcha Smack.
Just wanted to make sure, you know, my man wasn't catching any strays over here.
Absolutely.
Right? There's a lot of content to make about the game. There are a lot of WuWa content creators right now that talk about not necessarily like the gameplay meta sense, but like the WuWa meta sense, right? Just like how the game is going in social media, how the game is going in terms of like its overall development, the new features and stuff that are getting added. In my opinion, right, you don't need to be good at the game to talk about the quality of life that's going on in things like, you know, collecting and gathering materials, right? How cool the characters look, right? The story progression and like problems or the good things that you find about the story, right? Making content about like a character story quest or reacting to a trailer, right? That's not something that you need to be good at the game to do, right? But if you're somebody that's critiquing tier lists, right? Reordering characters, right? Giving advice on like why XYZ evaluation is wrong, being an expert or being like one of the better players, right? Is what gives you a leg to stand on in that conversation. This is a bit more of a specific example just regarding you, because again, it's sort of like a historical precedent. It's an expectation, right? You're coming in from Honkai Star Rail with this very advanced, like you are like the 0 cycler.
Yeah, kind of. No,
Like,
I wouldn't say it's like all my
of,
content, but yeah, I do a few.
You do a fair amount of it, right? Like I see you posting about the meta a bunch. Your latest video is like Sunday ruined the meta. You're able to make the claim that Sunday ruined the meta because you're knowledgeable about the game. Right? You are considered an expert on the game. You're considered at the apex level. People take your thoughts about Honkai Star Rail seriously because you are kind of like the guy, right? You're the guy that sweats like crazy. You play MOC more than you talk to your kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're somebody that has that much commitment, if you're somebody that's putting in that much effort, people are going to take what you're saying about HSR a lot more seriously.
Absolutely.
Right? So when you're going to WuWa, right, and you're kind of doing similar content where you're talking about tier lists, you're talking about character value, right? You're talking about the meta, right? But you don't have that same skill level. I don't think the translation was necessarily as smooth as it could have been. Imagine you trying to make all of this content about HSR and the meta when you're doing like 9 cycle clears on the weekly. Do you think your content would have been taken as seriously or gotten as popular if like your best clears are like 9 cycles?
I think it doesn't really matter as long as it's entertaining, because I've actually done a couple of clears, like just using like some random ass teams. I used hook or whatever, and it does like horribly. I did like a 17 cycle clear. I feel like the content specifically, it doesn't have to be a 0 cycle just for it to be good content. As long as it's entertaining and people like to watch it, it'll make it a content that someone would want to watch.
I feel like that's a different sort of content though, where it's like you are somebody that has proven that you can do crazy shit in the game, accomplish crazy things, and now you're like intentionally making shitty results. That's entirely different, right, than somebody who has never gotten the good results, just constantly doing like mid things.
Okay, I guess your point is because I can 0 cycle, I can also intentionally use random ass teams and make that content, and therefore like it's content, compared to a guy that doesn't know what the hell he's doing and he's actually trying his absolute best, and he can only do a 9 cycle compared to that guy. Is that the comparison I'm making?
Yeah.
But I feel like the second guy, it could still be entertaining content just for people to see him struggling if he can somehow edit to be a good content. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that, oh, because that guy, he can't 0 cycle, therefore if he were to post a 9 cycle clear, it's like just horrible content. I feel like as long as that content itself, something that people want to watch, whether or not he can or cannot 0, shouldn't take away whether that content is like quote-unquote good content. I know where you're going from, which is because I dedicated so much, or rather I spent a lot more time in HSR compared to Wuthering Waves, and if I were to make a Wuthering Waves tier list react, I am definitely not going to be as knowledgeable in Wuthering Waves compared to HSR. Because I spend a lot less time. I don't dedicate that much time doing like 0 cycles or quote-unquote 0 cycles in Wuthering Waves. Therefore, my quote-unquote value of feedback in a Wuthering Wave tier list is not going to be probably as insightful compared to HSR. But it also brings me back to my original point, which is I feel like you don't need to be Apex if you're just going to be making a content that is going to be something that people is going to watch.
I completely agree with you. There is definitely a market for like people that are like not that good at the game, and their lack of skill, right? And you know, them kind of like messing up and them being extremely relatable is like a good basis for their content, right? And you know, they ham it up with the humor. I see a lot of people in your chat bringing up Box 2, right? I'm just assuming that he is not that good at HSR from what your chat is saying. I don't want to make any bold claims about that.
Yeah, he's a little bit goofy. He's like the goofy guy, yeah.
Okay, yeah, he's like the goofy guy, right? He's like, you know, he's just here for a fun time, right? Not for a skilled time. It's fun content for people to watch. It's very engaging because of who Box 2 is, right? His personality, right? His mannerisms, whatever the hell else he does, right? That's kind of what's carrying his content, right? If you're just watching somebody that's like maybe not that good at the game, but they're not kind of pushing it forward with their persona, you're kind of just watching somebody that's bad at the game play it, right?
Absolutely.
And I don't know if like that's engaging at all for most people.
Absolutely.
Imagine there are like prerequisites to make content, right? Being good at the game, it'll fill a lot of the prerequisites for you to make good content that people want to watch. But then that personality piece, right? That funny input, blah, 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 whatever else, that can help make up for a lack of skill or like a lack of maybe commitment on like learning rotations and stuff, right? Because now it's more the content creator themselves, not their gameplay or not their thoughts on the gameplay pushing the content.
Okay, if you want to talk about what makes that content a good content, so there's a whole list of like checkbox that you have to be good at the game, or like I actually think being good at the game is probably at the bottom barrel, but also it could be depending on like what direction you're going for. Like if you want to be like a guide channel, or like I feel like having the charm or like the personality, the charisma of the actual content creator is probably one of, if not the most important. I think, for example, for yourself, I think you have a sexy ass voice, bro. Your voice sounds so good, and I think that's like a really good way to carry content. So like if you could literally be saying like the most random shit and people would still hear it because it's a content, right? And the way you like package it, the cards and edits, I feel like just because if you are not the Apex player, you can still make those contents because that's like what people want to see. And whether or not that yeah, exactly. It doesn't qualify or not qualify whether you're good at the game or not, in my opinion, yeah.
You bring up like an interesting point, right? A lot of my content early on didn't start off getting into like technicality, right? Didn't get into tier lists, didn't get into like character rankings or value of character power. I only started doing that when I had like notable evidence from my gameplay, when I actually started doing like faster clears, when I was able to take that footage and put it in the content where I'm talking about character strength, right? Where I'm talking about character power. There was a point, right, where I got good enough at the game to feel comfortable making that level of content.
Okay.
I was at the point where I was getting like 1 minute clears, right, with characters like Jian, right, where I was like learning spicy rotations for Chang Li. When I figured out how to swap cancel, right, and have 3 characters on the field at the same time. That was like a journey that I went on to learn more about the game, to kind of get immersed in the mechanics. And through that, I felt a lot more comfortable, right, talking about character strength, talking about character power. If I hadn't done those, then I don't think I would have felt kind of like the justification on my end to be commenting on tier lists, to be saying that the placement here doesn't really make sense. I would have needed to play those characters, right? Learn how to optimize them, right? Find out their potential. There's like one really cool thing with Yang Yang, right? Because her outro skill isn't lost on swap, you can go ahead and quick swap with her in your main DPS's rotation, even though you're playing a hyper carry lineup. Moonlit Clouds isn't lost on swap, and you can do some crazy shit with Yang Yang, right? Swap her in with your main DPS and do damage with both characters at the same time without losing any efficiency in your rotations. But that's not something that people talk about, right? That's something that I learned from experimenting. I've done it a couple of times on stream, and everyone's like, holy shit, you can do this? That level of experimentation, right? I think that's why Gotcha Smack has a lot of engagement for his WuWa content, right? He thinks outside of the box. He takes the time to go in and learn these mechanics and give a comprehensive point of view based off of his experiments. That willingness to learn things, right? That willingness to kind of share those thoughts and actually put the work in when the game isn't easy, right? When the game requires a certain amount of skill to execute on these strategies. Seeing somebody that's putting in that work makes them a lot more reliable.
You know something that people who have not put in the amount of testing, you know something more than them.
And the thing is, you put in a shit ton of testing in your HSR stuff. Like, you get into a fuck ton of like different situations, different team comps, different rotations, different like orders, different speed tuning, right?
Yep.
You do the homework whenever you kind of come to the table with stuff for HSR.
Yep.
And when you're kind of creating the same content for WuWa, but then not really doing the homework in a sense, it's like that's where I guess the drop is for me.
And I think that's perfectly fine, because WuWa is not like my main game. So the content I made for WuWa is based on my own knowledge and extent of my knowledge for WuWa at that point of time. So I feel that I don't need to get into all the way into the mechanical details just to make sure that everything is at absolute min-max efficiency. If you do it, that's like good, because like, you know, you know more than people who don't. There's like this, you know, these like more generic guide makers, right? Like, for example, if you look at like a more like guide makers that don't have like as much in-depth knowledge, or like their guides are a little bit more generalized, I feel like it's still a really, really good content, because like a shit ton of people watch it, and like even if they don't know exactly like every single minor detail, I still think it provides value to the player base at that point of time.
I'll push back on that a little bit, because one situation that came up was a lot of people very undervaluing certain parts of Kamelia's kit, because all of the guide makers on released just push this idea that all you do on this character is press E and then hold the left mouse button for
That's literally
every
what I
type of
did.
content in the game.
That's literally what I did, and I cleared 3 stars. I was so happy about it.
Exactly, right? And it works, right? But that's not the best way to play the character.
But so what
And when
if
they
they don't play the best way though? So
We're
what?
talking about guide makers.
Yeah, exactly. I watched
And
a
so
guide
if they-
maker. Like, my knowledge for Camellia is based on a guide maker that didn't know exactly any intrinsic extra additional combos for Camellia. I literally just saw the guide, press E, and you just spin. So even if that guide maker didn't know exactly what she did, maybe to a level of expertise like yourself, I still got value out of that guide, and I still had fun playing Camellia on my account, and I did the 30 out of 30.
That's the thing, right? Like your chat and like your content, right, is focused on doing things like zero cycling, right? Most players, especially players that maybe watch content like yours, they want to get better at the game. They want to do things and like understand, right, what the best things are. When we're having guide makers, right, that aren't doing like the experimentation and kind of like just putting, I guess, maybe like a shortcut, right, to her combos, people will think they're not really doing their due diligence, because Camellia actually has 4 different rotations.
Holy shit, insane.
She has a Blossom mode rotation, which is the one that you're doing, where you just hold left click, right? She also has a lot of transitionary rotations where she goes and uses her regular basic attacks and uses the vertical spin instead of like the horizontal one, right?
Yep.
Then she has double intro rotations, where she stacks Sanhua's outro buff with her budding mode,
Oh my
right?
God.
And amplifies damage a lot more that way. And then she can do the Blossom mode spin, as well as the vertical spin, her regular basic attack spins using double intro. And when we're not listing out those as possibilities in our guides, right, then people are basically under the impression that this is the optimal way to play her. But then, oh, we're finding out later, right, because people are actually taking the time to learn the character. We're finding out there are 3 more rotations, right, that are actually better.
What is the Wuthering Waves community like? What do they really want out of a guide? Because I feel like for HSR, if you're trying to be somebody that like want to do 0 cycles, or you want to do like an extremely fast clear, you are definitely in like the huge minority.
Pokke, they want to know the best way to play the character. Pressing E and holding the left mouse button is not the best way to play Camellia.
I mean, technically, if you want to talk about like the best way to play a character, you should try to do like a, you know, reach the optimal speed points, and then like you can just don't take the damage and you will clear a lot easier, because technically that is the best way, which will translate to 0 cycling, which also I guess kind of points back to your question. Even if I don't use the most optimal way of playing Camellia, and if I were to just watch a bare bone guide, okay, this is what I did, 10 minutes, I go in and I do it on my own account, and I could still do that. I wouldn't feel, okay, this is for me. I don't speak for the entire Wuthering Waves community, and I don't think I ever will. But for me, if I watch that guide and I learn how to play Camellia in like that 5 minutes, and I did what I wanted to do, I would be quite happy. And I wouldn't think to myself, oh shit, what am I missing out on the 3 other combinations of rotations that weren't brought up in that guide? I was just like, oh, okay, I learned it and I'm done.
Wouldn't
I
you
would never
just
know.
want to know that there are 4 different rotations for the character?
For me, not really, because like I just wanted to play. Okay, but then again, it really goes back down to the whole Wuthering Waves community. Are Wuthering Wave players like are they all like elites? Like I wanna learn every single optimal rotation. I want to do a 60-second clear. I want to know the ins and out of every single character. I want to get better game every single day. Or are they more towards the more chill side where, okay, as long as I get a character, I just got her, I want to play, I go in, I go out, and then just chill. I want to look at her tits. And so that one I have no idea. Which I guess on the same note, you mentioned something about my chat kind of watched me for like my 0 cycle. I would probably say 99% of my chat probably just watch me just to suffer.
When you're a guide maker, right, that isn't exploring the possibilities, that isn't, I guess, listing out things that you would find out, right, with a day of experimentation or a day or 2 of experimentation with the character, then it kind of paints the image, right, that you're not exploring all the different possibilities, right? You're not putting in necessarily maybe like the effort or the time or the thought, right, to explore all these different rotations, to discover the character's full potential. Right? And when we have the guides that are, you know, not explicitly marked as beginner, easiest way to play them, right? And we're basically pushing forward stuff that isn't complete in a sense. That's where that argument comes in for people that are knowledgeable about the game, right? That take the time to experiment with rotations, that understand all the different mechanics and how they interact with each other. And then they're able to bring more complete thoughts to the conversation in regards to the character. Then that means that inherently, I do believe that the information that's more complete is more valuable and more sought after by the player
absolutely.
base.
Absolutely. So like if
Right?
you're able to
Like,
get
I think we can agree on that.
Yeah,
Better
absolutely,
information
absolutely.
is better. For some of the guide makers, right? I don't want to say that like if they were better at the game, they'd have more complete information.
You are making it sound like they must have complete information, otherwise they can't post those content, which I don't really
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that the quality of the content and the perception of characters across the community and their potential, right? People say Camellia is the most easy brain dead character in the game, but the fact of the matter is that that's just not true. She has a lot of complexity in her playstyle if you take the time to actually learn what it is. When every guide maker says that she has one rotation that is quite literally brain dead to use, then that's the kind of perception we're spreading across the player base, that this character is super easy, when in reality, they have rotations that are more complex and do more damage, right? Just like how in Honkai Star Rail, you can have different speed tunings and team comps that are, one's a lot easier and more achievable, right? But the other one does more damage. And not highlighting the potential is where the disconnect is.
Have you heard of the Iyo incident?
I'm aware of Iyo's journey.
He brought up a point that kind of, whatever you said, kind of brought me back to then, which was, he was like this fighting game player, and he could do all of the Kara cancelling and the negative edge and the software, and like he knew a lot of this, because that was also for Wuthering Waves, right? He knew a lot of these additional mechanics that could be applied from his fighting game days to Wuthering Waves. There's a lot more depth to a creator than what the mainstream audience would look at, because he actually went ahead and took those into the character that he's playing with. And it kind of reminds me of this thing that you're trying to establish, which is you can also do a lot of different combos with Camellia. But I think even if other guide makers, like mainstream guide makers nowadays, they are making guides of Wonder Waves, even if they do not know like the quote-unquote, the more in-depth advanced mechanics, I feel like it doesn't necessarily make their guide quote-unquote incomplete, because they technically did what they set out to do, which is to help a player understand a character. And this is where it would differ, where are you a player that wants to know the more advanced stuff? And maybe if they want to, they could look for more advanced guides. Or if they're just somebody that, okay, I want to open up YouTube, Camellia guide, press in, and then just see the first thing, and I just want to play the thing. I feel like these players will have fundamentally different concepts of like what it could be deemed as like a complete or incomplete guide.
I guess at this point, we're kind of just debating the definition of a complete guide. My viewpoint on a complete guide, right, is listing out where a character's potential is based off of their kit. Listing one rotation when she's capable of a lot more is not a complete guide to me. Even for a casual, them learning the other rotation for single target could be the difference for their uninvested account doing a 3-star clear versus a 2-star clear. A rotation doing more damage is more relevant for casuals. What's the point of you already clearing and then doing more damage versus you almost not clearing, doing more damage and now clearing? I don't even see why your chat is talking about casuals or like mentioning them at all, because this sort of optimal rotation that does more damage is only casuals are the ones benefiting the most from it. They're being a little boosted right now.
The whole difference in rotation is like a 2% final damage increase, then like, it changes very little things. So maybe it was not like...
And there are people that clear
it.
at 2 minutes and 10 seconds, and then if they did the other rotation, they'd clear under 2 minutes.
Why are you so concerned with what other WuWa guide makers are making if you can beat that guy that makes those guides that are deemed complete in your books? It sounds like you're quite discontent with the whole guide makers. So why not just you be that guy that do complete guides? Then you can offer to the viewers what you are expecting.
When we're kind of going in and then we're setting this first impression that Camellia is, again, brain dead easy, has no complexity at all, Corral cooked and just made the most brain dead easy character in the game, when that is factually not the case, based off of the complexity that's actually available in her team rotations, then we're kind of having conflicting information, right? I can make a video as a follow-up, right? Talking about how Camellia is actually a complex character. But because the initial impression of her is that she's a brain-dead easy character, then now I am sort of on the back foot.
But if you are right, the public opinion wouldn't change the fact that you're right? This is like quite interesting because major or like massive or like the general guide makers, they were unable to discover that Camellia had more in-depth abilities to her rotations. But you discovered it. So if you were to make a guide or like a video following up say Camellia is not a brain dead unit, anyone that actually goes in to see the video, and if you can actually prove that she's not a brain dead unit, they will say,
I did make a video.
Yeah, like, okay, yeah, exactly. They will know that, you know, you're not going to ask. You have proved that she has more depth. Is that not?
I did all the things you're talking about.
What's the problem? Yeah,
I don't think it's necessarily like a problem or a concern for me to want to just have higher quality, more complete guides in the space overall. I don't think that's like a wild or crazy opinion for me to have. The guide makers that are kind of doing these early access or preview sort of guides, right? People that have access to the creator servers, they have a lot more time to play with the characters. They have a lot more time to experiment with rotations. They don't have the time constraint of, you know, having to pull the character on release, build them, make sure they're slotted in, do their stuff in the tower. They're able to do all of that on their own time. They are able to basically have that preview of the character, right? When we have all of that utility and then we're not, you know, fully utilizing it to get the most complete information, right? That to me is kind of like, maybe we could be doing a little bit more here.
I think it's probably not a question of whether could we be doing more, because you have proved that you could, right? You discovered there's more depth with Camellia, but it's more like, what makes a guide enough for a player? If a casual were to just watch a general large guide maker's guide and they get what they want out of the guide, even if they didn't get the more because they didn't get into as in-depth, but they still managed to view and achieve what they want to do, I think that's okay. And then if, like you mentioned, I think there's also situations where, you know, with the 2% additional more damage, and then you are able to clear from 2 minutes 30 to 2 minutes 10, if they still need more help, then you are there to offer them the more advanced stuff in your content. So they will search, okay, I couldn't clear, is there a way to increase my criminal damage? And then they will see your, oh, this is something that you brought up that the other guide makers didn't. And therefore, your guide is a lot more concise. But to say that every other guide needs to have more, just because they are not able to uncover it, might not be that good for every single player in Wuthering Waves. Because what if they just don't care? What if they just want to watch like a quick guide and just get it over and done with, Because we won't know what is like the demographic for the whole Wuthering Waves community, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess I could just flip that right back on you, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
we don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you
I
don't
can
know.
just, I can just make the entire counterpoint, right?
Exactly. So like if the entire Wuthering Waves community is they're all elitists, they all want to have the absolute best for Camellia, the absolute best rotation, then I'm completely in the wrong, right? You're absolutely right. But like in my experience with Honky Starbucks and Honkai Star Rail, is in the minority. That's why I have the whole preconceived notion that this group of people is probably in the minority. So if you're able to offer them more, that's great. But if you are not, doing all the advanced stuff, it doesn't really make every other guide like bad guides.
That's definitely not what I'm saying. They're not bad guides, right? They're high quality. They give a great in-depth overview of the kits. I'm mostly saying that those guides had the opportunity to present more information that for a fair number of players, in my opinion, would be helpful. Right? And when we're thinking about guides, like these are already like, 13, 14, 15-minute guides, right? Another section on an additional rotation would be like 1 or 2 more minutes in the video, right? And like, guys, if you're using chapters and if you're using chapters on YouTube and you're separating out where the rotations are, it's like not a big deal, right? It's like, it's not like we're trying to like move the earth here, okay? We're not trying to move mountains or anything. It's an additional ad that is not going to take away from the viewer experience because rotations are at like the end of videos anyways, right? So it's just additional stuff that only helps the player base. That isn't like taking away from like the casual person, I guess, that just doesn't give a shit and wants to play in the easiest way possible, right? It's not like taking away from them to have an additional 30 minutes or 2 minutes talking about another rotation.
It kind of sounds like those guys are bad. Like the way you're saying it, kind of sounds like those guys are bad. Like, oh my god, just one more minute.
You're the one coming in
here
with hot takes, man. You're the one coming in here with these blazing hot, incendiary.
Okay, to me, it sounds like what you're insinuating. Like those guys, okay, maybe not bad, but they're not good enough. Is that fair?
I'd prefer to use the term they could be better and more complete.
Okay, be politically correct. Wow, okay, fine. I think we can guess kind of review that. Because me personally, I don't really lock in that much about the quality of guides. Because I mean, you're still in the space. Like you're very much.
Yeah, I can tell from yours.
Yeah, absolutely,
I'm sorry,
absolutely.
That was
so.
mean.
No, absolutely. I think that's completely fine because I do admit that I'm definitely a tourist in Wuthering Waves, and I think that's it is what it is. But because you are still so deeply ingrained in like the whole Wuthering Waves community, I guess you are more concerned with like the quality of all guide content in the space. Like you want there to be more. Like you mentioned, you want there to be more. So you want the actual Wuthering Wave Guidemakers, they take more time to invest into Camellia and actually find out that she's not a brain dead unit. So yeah. It is what it is. Okay, from what I have seen or like, experienced myself, because I made that parody video from your that video, right?
Oh god.
I feel like you are a little bit of a Kurobot, wouldn't you say?
Define Kurobot.
Okay.
I'd love to hear your definition of the word
Kurobot. Okay. So I'm just gonna apply this for both Kurobot and Hoyoshills. I think for myself, I like to play the bit that I'm like the rank 1 Hoyoshills for like, especially for my streams. Like, oh my god, I'm the Hoyoshills, I get good pulls, I get a 0 cycle, I get oh my god, I'm the Hoyoshills, yeah, fuck Wuthering Waves, whatever. I like to play into the bit, but I feel like my attention or like my main focus is for Honkai Star Rail. So if Honkai Star Rail was a game made by Kuro Games, NetEase, Riot Games, it wouldn't really change the way I would play the game because my main focus is Honkai Star Rail as a game itself. I'm just basing it off of that one video. Unless you're telling me that one video was satire, then fine. But that one video I saw where Kuro deserves apology, it doesn't really feel like your concern was Wuthering Waves. It was a lot more into Kuro Games itself. So that's what I would define as either a shill or a bot. It's like you are more locked in for what the company is doing than what the game is doing.
Well, the viewpoint that I have on it, right, is when a company makes a really, really good product, I'm doing a disservice, right, if I only talk about how good the product is. I'd also like to talk about the people making it, because they're responsible for why it's so good.
But that wouldn't really make it such that it's about the game anymore, right? Because that would be like the company.
No, it is about the game, because if the game wasn't good, I wouldn't talk about the developers in a positive light.
I mean, there's two different ways. So that there's one way, like, yep, you talk about the developers make these changes to the games. Kuro devs cooked. Or actually talking about those game changes which will impact the game itself and the player base. For example, if HSR, oh my god, they added the resin reskin, they added the subset selector, they added the free 5-star. I think all those are excellent changes for the game itself. But it is not so much that, oh my god, hell that way.
Yeah, you can't because WuWa does it first.
What do you mean?
Or you can, but it doesn't have as much impact when you glaze Hoyo for it because WuWa does it all first. So it's like when you're like a follower, right?
WuWa doesn't
of
have
somebody
a
that's
subset
implementing
selector.
good QOL, right? When you're like a follower, you glazing or you talking about how good it is doesn't have as much of an impact because now it just looks like HSR, right? Or Genshin is scrambling to keep up.
But Water Wave doesn't have a subset selector, right? Or your
Oh
echoes.
yeah, we don't have that one yet. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, you can glaze. You should glaze that one. You should glaze that one.
No, and that's my point, right? I feel like I wouldn't have to glaze a company because they added a good change. I would like to say this is a good change for the game, but I wouldn't wanna say, oh my god, thank god Hoyoverse added this.
Why not?
Because that's what makes you a shill.
So when people do a good thing, you can't say that they did a good thing.
I mean, you can say that they did a good thing, but like the focus
What's
is on
wrong
the
with
game, right?
that?
There's nothing wrong with being a.
But you see, you made shill sound like a negative.
It does kind of sound negative because like people would just think that you're linked with the company and not the game.
If someone does a good thing and you say that it's good, and then you acknowledge that they did a good thing, what's wrong with that?
It can be very over exaggerated. So for example, I think the description for the character designs, it's like it's kind of over exaggerated. It's like it's character designs. You know what I'm saying?
Is it?
Okay, they basically revealed 5 different characters, 5 different weapons for the
And they look
version 2.
entirely different than the existing cast.
Holy shit, that changed my life. That's insane. This is no longer satire. I feel like I would never make that video for Enforcers in Honkai Star Rail.
Yeah, because all they did was they just took the flame chasers and put them in 3.0. So there's not really that much to talk about. It's like they just recycled character designs from 6 years ago.
Nah, but if you want to talk about like the whole thing about why they added them to Honkai Star Rail instead of like leaving the Honkai Impact 3, it will have a lot more depth, especially for players that never played Honkai Impact, myself included. So those were all basically new to me as a player.
Well, that's the thing. I played Honkai Impact 3, right? And I know that these flame chasers came out almost half a decade ago, right? And so when I see them again, I'm like, damn, we're really digging into the depths of our creativity here, aren't we?
I mean, maybe for you it's about the depths of creativity, but maybe for like other... I mean, I don't play Honkai Impact 3, but from what I've seen in like my chat and comments, is like they were very happy that they're actually reintroducing Honkai Impact 3 back to the line because they're like Honkai Impact 3 enjoyers. And like they managed to merge all this together. But I think I kind of digress a little bit. Essentially, a character design.
I mean, we're getting into like personal opinions, right? Because I went in, I said the five characters from Renaissance look good, and then I also have the opinion that hey, they kind of recycled the entire cast from HI3 and it for 3.0. But you have a different opinion because you have a different experience, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think we're entitled to our own opinions when it comes to this.
Yeah, like whether you think about like that design is good or bad is completely subjective. But I wouldn't go out and say, oh my god, praise a company because they designed these credits and they look so amazing that they changed everything. I feel like that's a little bit much.
This is why I'm praising them, right? I'm praising them because one of the big critiques for the game was the kind of like bland character designs on certain parts of the roster. Or when I see the 2.0 characters, I see the 5 characters that have an entirely different palette, very different visual design, and clear aesthetic that was inspired by the feedback from the players. I felt that I was justified in saying, wow, Kuro listened here when it came to their designs. And it came to the new lineup based off of player feedback.
Based off of player feedback is like it's a good thing, right? Because they actually listen. Oh my god.
Yeah, because it shows that they're listening, right? That when people don't like something, the devs are actually doing something to fix it, right? I know a lot of the people in your chat aren't used to that dynamic, so it's a little strange to witness live, right?
Bro,
when another game
I came up with devs. Listen, buddy, I was one of the first glazers way back in the day. Devs listen came from me. I know exactly what I'm talking about, but you also tend to also make quite a bit of comparisons between the dynamics of the company with another company. It's kind of reminiscent of war comments in a gacha revenue, and I think that's a little bit of a shill behavior.
War comments and gacha revenue are based off of incomplete numbers, right? Because we got PC, we got console, we don't have this we don't have the full info on it, right? We can agree on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But whether or not the numbers are completely incomplete.
So gacha war comments are basically people fighting each other, right? Talking about EOS with literally incomplete information. When I make comparisons about features in games, we have all the information because it's in the game. And so I am comparing features, I'm making comparisons between companies and devs based off of features that everybody can confirm is in the game. When you're talking and fighting about revenue, you're fighting with information that is not complete and, like we've discovered, can be made the fuck up.
Why fight fight in the first place.
I don't view it in the same fighting as fighting over gacha revenue, because I'm talking about stuff that is in the game, that everybody can factually confirm is in the game, right? That are features of the experience.
All right, absolutely.
And
but,
when I make comparisons between things that are quite like one-to-one you can find in the real world, that's different from making comparisons between fake numbers that don't exist, right? Or that we don't actually know. Right? One is fighting fiction with fiction. The other is fact with fact.
Firstly, I think the gacha revenue thing, having estimates is quite interesting because technically they are subjected to the same estimates. So even if they're not completely factual, they are under the same parameters. Or at least that's what I would think, unless there's a literal Hoyo employee there manipulating numbers. Like if everybody's under the same parameters, even if they are not all exactly down to the last accuracy, it might paint a little bit of a picture of like the trends and overall statistics of the revenue. But honestly, I nobody gives a shit. People with actual intelligence won't give a shit about that because what your game makes doesn't determine if the game is good. Which kind of brings me back into whether or not you're comparing gacha revenue or whether or not you're comparing actual in-game things in Crow games. Making the comparison between one company to the other company, it seems like shill behavior because like every time it's like oh my god, what is HSR doing? Look at how great Crow games are. Why can't Hoyoverse do this? Oh my god, Crow games did this. I wouldn't need to go out of my way to say how bad this other company is for me to showcase how good my own product is. And I think that's kind of what I'm getting from yourself, which is I think you make quite a bit of comparison between both companies to highlight the features of Wuthering Waves.
How many people do you think that play WuWa right now have played Genshin?
More than half.
Do you think people like hearing about how good the game that they're playing is in the gacha space?
Oh, absolutely.
Why do you think people are not playing Genshin Impact and playing Wuthering Waves?
They like more things in Wuthering Waves. They're things that Genshin doesn't have.
Me highlighting those things is, in a sense, me appealing towards an audience, right? That wants to hear about that.
So you're feeding into the community that wants to hear bad things about Genshin Impact.
I'm feeding into the community that wants to understand and fully realize the value of what they're experiencing, the value of what their game is. And the only way to deem something as good is to compare it to something else. If there's only one singular thing that has no comparisons, that has no competition, how can you say it's good or bad when it's the only thing?
Like when it first launched, there was definitely a huge population of content creators who made the comparison of Wuthering Waves to Genshin Impact because it really was like the Genshin killer, right? It's the open world, combat, everything, and like they did a lot of things that Genshin stepped on. But towards that first initial launch, everything that Wuthering Waves are doing, they are doing for Wuthering Waves, right? They are optimizing their quality of life, the ecosystem, etc. I feel like you wouldn't need to make a comparison just to illustrate that these are good systems because players that play Wuthering Waves would know that they are good systems and they play Wuthering Waves. It kind of makes it more like you're trying to convince that not so much that Wuthering Waves is good, but more like Genshin is bad. Don't play Genshin. Or like Hoyoverse is bad because they have been making this game for 5 years and they haven't changed it.
There's a chance that somebody's going to see my video, right? Talking about all of these features that WuWa's putting in, how much the devs listen to the player base, how every single patch, right? They're implementing some form of quality of life or some sort of feature that the players have directly been asking for, right? And improve the overall gameplay experience. Every single patch. Yeah, so me talking about that, right?
Yep.
There's a chance that a player will potentially watch that video, right? Absorb some of the information and then be like, oh, maybe I should start playing Wuthering Waves. Then that's +1 viewer for me. That's +1 viewer for the Wuthering Waves community. And now we're growing more.
It's basically talking about patch notes. Like, okay, these patch notes, these things happen. It's great. And then if players want to play Wuthering Waves, they'll play Wuthering Waves.
You only have a set amount of time in the day. You can't play every single gacha game on the market. To play one gacha game, sometimes you have to put down another.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so when I can highlight the value that you're getting for the playtime, where you don't have to sit through hours of a story quest, right? 35 minutes of static images and black screen, white text dialogue. If there is a situation where I can compare the gameplay experience between the two and highlight that one respects your time a lot more, that the average gameplay experience, right, your enjoyment per hour spent is higher in one game over another, there might be some people, right, that have been, let's just say, suffering after the Banananas quest, right, that are suffering after whatever the fuck is going on in Natland, right? I'm seeing so many Twitter posts about how everybody fucking despises the region. If we're in the situation where these players who are disgruntled, who are essentially not having a very good time, boss, and show another game that quite literally is a polar opposite in so many different ways, then that means that that's an excellent opportunity, right, to have a conversation for people to see what WuWa's about. Because let's be honest, the game did have a launch, right? That was a bit controversial. That got a bit of bad news. that people weren't happy about. The game got quite a bit of shit for it, right? And with the story progressions, critiques over there, there's a little bit of other stuff going on as well, right, in that avenue. And so me highlighting, right, where the devs are doing really, really great things and where other devs, right, are dropping the ball and making, let's just say, not the best gameplay experience for its players, right? I don't think a lot of people like 2.6. A lot of people called it the worst patch in gacha gaming. You might be able to agree with that.
I mean, if we're talking about story, sure, but I wouldn't play Honkai Star just for the story. I play Honkai Star for Honkai Star.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
go for it.
I'm just saying, you know, some people, they value story a lot, like
Absolutely.
Ryuku Sensei.
Yep, absolutely. Some do.
Exactly, right? And those players, right, they might be like, well, fuck this shit. I don't want to play this game anymore. I feel like I'm wasting my time hearing about monkeys and Rappa talk about bananas. I don't want that anymore. It's subjective, and I'm talking about the people that, you know, sit on the side of not liking that.
You're highlighting how these other Hoyoverse games have, like, quote-unquote, dropped the ball, so that you can now highlight what Watering Waves have, and you can draw in the player base to +1 viewer, +1 Watering Wave community, right? I feel like that does qualify as like a shill behavior, because if I were to take myself as example, I wouldn't go out of my ways. Oh my god, look at Watering Waves.
Pokke,
or like,
Pokke. That is a crazy thing to say. So me wanting more players to play my game and more people to view my content is shill behavior from a CC?
No, but if you want to make a comparison between other company, then I think it does. Because like, why do you need to say or try to point out that point when Watering Waves itself can just do it anyways? You get what I'm saying? Like, if they want to play Watering Waves, they can see what Watering Waves has because they want to play Watering Waves. It almost kind of sounds like you are basically, don't look at those other things, but look at me instead. So it's almost like, you know, like how gacha revenue, Hoyoshills always versus Crewbots. Oh my god, WuWa date game, or like Honkai Star date game, Xenozone Zero date game. Play this game instead. I only play this. That's what I'm getting from this. But if I were to put myself in that scenario, I wouldn't say things that, oh, that game is just so bad, you should play this instead. Because at the end of the day, those games, they have different appeals. So like, just because, like, let's just say there's a Sundays yep too much, or like 2.6, this is all the banana brain rot, I would still play Honkai Star because I'm playing Honkai Star for the turn based, the team building, etc. And this same point can quite literally be applied to every other game. So that's why I also have a little bit of disagreement with Ryuku, because for him, the majority of what made him say Honkai Star was a bad game was because of story. But my perspective is Honkai Star is a lot more than just the story. So that's why we.
And you two gentlemen are absolutely entitled to your opinion and your desired way of enjoying the game.
And I think that's what everyone should be entitled to, like their own way of viewing whether or not that game is worth their time. So it kind of just sounds desperate. Does that sound spicy? Like, oh my god, play Watering Waves, play Watering Waves. Okay, but okay, I'm just saying for content. Yeah.
Okay, you're definitely farming now. Holy shit.
Oh, absolutely. It just sounds
you're
a little
fucking
desperate.
farming now. Okay, I see what you're talking about. All right, so what the fuck was that?
I want to farm. I want to piss off some Crewbots, you know? As the devs, listen, guy, I like to farm a little bit of Crewbots, absolutely.
Let's go back to the root cause of the matter. How am I able to make comparisons between these games in the first place? Why am I able to do that?
There are fundamental differences.
Let's dig a little bit deeper than that.
Like you're comparing Watering Waves.
Because there is one game or developer that is lacking compared to the other. That's how I'm able to make these comparisons in the first place.
Because you're basically saying Hoyoverse is lacking compared to Kuro games.
Are they not?
That's a very, very subjective and a very, very big take. Because if you want to talk about just market cap, it's like, there's a reason why Hoyoverse earns the amount of money it does. And the events that they host. Yeah, it's
COVID
like,
buff.
It is what it is, man. I don't even feel comfortable saying this. Because for me, it just feels so, like I have to say, oh my god, this company is so good. So that's why I say whenever you make a comparison that, oh my god, my company did all this, that's why I just couldn't feel it. Like, I would never say, oh my god, Hoyoverse is the best because they have that, oh my god, they just make all this money. It just feels so wrong.
See,
that's why I had that feeling of you being a shill, because you constantly say this with like your videos comparing Crow games to Hoyoverse.
That's the only argument that the Hoyoshill side brings to the table.
Oh my god, my game makes so much more money than yours. That automatically means it's better in every single way.
That's the gacha revenue, that's the gacha PvP argument there.
That's
right, on the Hoyoshills
side.
side.
A lot of points.
That's quite literally what it is from pretty much every angle.
Our game makes more money. WuWa EOS. Hey, oh my god. Firefly's banner made 100 million.
And wouldn't you say there will be a lot more than goes behind just raw revenue? Because they actually made it happen.
Okay, so we're on the situation of revenue, right? And let's just be honest, right? higher revenue doesn't mean a better product, right?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure
absolutely.
Comcast makes a shit ton of money despite
Absolutely.
being the shittiest ISP, you know, on one half of the globe.
I mean,
Comcast makes a fuck ton of money but has terrible service and terrible products.
Mm-hmm.
But just because they make a lot of money, does that mean they're the best internet service in the world?
Absolutely not.
No,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Let's not play
absolutely.
games like that, right? Let's not beat around the bush like that, right?
It was one point out of like a lot of different points that you could argue whether a company is worse off than the other company.
This
So
is
like
the
for
thing.
example, if you want to say
I'm-
Kuro Games is like a good company because devs listened, it's not like Kuro Games are the only company that did devs listened.
Of course not. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
But
there's
one
like,
can listen better than others. One can listen faster than others. One
Maybe-
can listen and then actually make changes that the people want. Others can listen, right? And then come out with whatever the fuck the Genshin artifact selector was.
how do you feel when you say things like my company can listen better?
Because they quite literally do. Genshin's example of listening was the fucking artifact selector with Natlan, and it's currently the worst region that ever released in the game. The Google Trends results are a fucking nightmare. I couldn't fathom that that would be the result after Dewey crying. It's the lowest it's ever been. Mavawika's drip is like the lowest out of all the fucking Archons.
No, as in, I'm not saying whether or not it's like did they listen better or worse, but like how do you feel when you say
Well,
my
if
company
that's
listened
the
better?
response to Dewey listening, right? Saying he's gonna make the fucking game better, and then Natlan is the worst received region in the history of the game. Are they listening? Was that good listening? Sure, they listened, but then they like fucking clearly the response wasn't what the player base wanted.
I feel like we will never know because I think Chaska did like diabolically well as well. And then there's
Because
always
her
gonna be
kit
always
is broken. She literally flies around and defies the laws of exploration in the game.
yeah. I just think there's a lot more that goes behind as to whether or not you deem this expansion a success. And I'm not like defending Genshin or Hongi Starbucks or whatever, but like there's a lot more than just Twitter liked it or like my YouTube comments liked it or my YouTube comments hate it because there's like millions of players that are beyond the internet space that actually play the game. And I would say those are probably like the vast majority. I would say people that actually watch YouTube videos and leave comments and actually talk on Reddit or whatever, they are like in the minority. I think majority of players are like just completely unaware of all this. And the fact that a game can still maintain where they are doing at a relatively this comfortable level.
There's no need to actually implement meaningful changes because if they're getting the same revenue streams, if they're getting the same success without actually giving good things to the player base, without putting in the effort and quality of life, then why change? Why put in the effort? Why listen? Why do things that could potentially hurt your bottom line when everything's just coming in?
I can't really speak for Genshin because I don't play Genshin really much at all. But I feel like for Honkai Star and Xenosaga Zero, they added changes quite frequently and quite rapidly.
That's the point of comparisons, right? WuWa's over here, they're making changes faster, they're making changes on a more timely basis, and they're making changes that are just objectively better, right? When it comes to the overall reception from the player base and how they feel about it. I don't think there was a single quality of life change in WuWa where the player base was like, this is not good, or this needs to be better, or I don't like this.
And
I
that's
genuinely don't believe that there was a single one.
Maybe-
Versus,
fine,
you
like-
have your quality of life in Hoyoverse games where people are literally talking about how shitty they are. Your quality of life is critiqued for being bad. How do you fuck up quality of life?
Yeah, Wuthering Waves made a lot of these good changes, and Hoyoverse may or may not match up the speed, or like they have different quality of life, or like maybe even the quality of life is bad. But it does sound like you are trying to, please play Wuthering Waves because look at what my company has done for this game.
It's funny that you say desperate because what it sounds like to me is that this kind of hate for comparison or this critique of the comparisons are Genshin or Hoyoverse or Honkai Star Rail or ZZZ players who are upset at kind of having their pants pulled down and being almost embarrassed in the gacha space by this smaller company, right? That's making literally billions of less dollars and they're doing a better job at listening to players.
I think it's not to do with people want to avoid it. I think it's just like, or at least for myself, I think it's just pointless to even make those comparisons because they're all just fundamentally
Well,
different
it
games.
would be pointless if you were on the losing side. That's the argument that I would bring as well.
Define losing side.
Well, it's defined in my videos, right? This is the thing. One outcome of me making these comparisons, right, is the player base recognizing across Hoyoverse games that, wow, our devs are kind of dropping the ball. They're not making things as fast as they should. When they do make changes, they could be a lot better. And when you see another company in the space that's going ahead and making changes and actually listening and then putting in the changes that players are actually asking for, right? One action that could happen is instead of critiquing the comparisons,
and talking about how these comparisons are bad and that they're just shills, the Hoyoverse players just go back to the developers, right? And they say, why don't you guys just do better? Why don't the Hoyoverse devs just do better? And then once things are in a better state, the comparisons will naturally stop. Because the comparisons, again, they're only made because one company in the space is a lot more lacking in what they're doing compared to others. And if that lacking or that disparity wasn't there, it'd be a lot harder to make the comparisons. It's hard for me to make comparisons between Adidas and Nike shoes because they're both pretty high quality, right? But if Adidas suddenly came out with shoes that fucking the soles fell off after like, 2-3 miles of running, then suddenly it's a lot easier to make comparisons, right, between the two companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not saying like, Hoyoverse is like garbage, right? But there are certain elements of it that are garbage, like the lack of a skip button for a 5-hour story where, 35 minutes of it are, again, static images and black screens with text.
I don't think adding a skip story to a story will make a story better or worse.
My opinion on the skip button is that the skip button essentially puts more responsibility on the developers. Because if your story is dog shit, players will just skip it. And if it's actually good, people will watch it completely. And so there's a lot more pressure on the devs to actually produce a quality product. Because then if they don't, people are going to skip it. And for Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact, there's no pressure at all to put any fucking effort into the story because you force everybody to watch it.
I mean, if you don't want to watch it, you can just yeah, it does waste your time. For someone that's not interested in the story, they can just spam the mouse button, but it will take a long ass time. Yeah, I agree.
Right, so if there was a skip button, suddenly there's a lot more motivation to actually make the story engaging and good. And so this kind of argument against the skip button for me is just cope. You're kind of just promoting or coping with the bad decisions of the devs. Because if there was one, then now they have to actually put in the effort to make it engaging.
Or if there was one, it could be a way for the developers, you know what, fuck it, we have a skip button, let's just fuck the story and make everyone just be a harem and then just go next.
I think you're reaching like a street basketball game.
I don't really know that much about Honkai Star Story as well, because I'm not that into lore. But apparently there's a shit ton of lore that I myself has missed. And the same can be applied for Warring Waves. Oh my god, just go around collecting wives, gathering wives. But all this is we're just reaching.
That's the thing. The WuWa 1.3 and 1.4 stories were very well paced. Not a lot of absurd, ridiculous dialogue, right? Where you feel like you're trapped in basically dialogue bondage instead of actually experiencing a fucking story. They don't have that in because they know that if they put that sort of bullshit in the story to extend playtime, then people are just gonna fucking skip it. So they don't have any of that garbage in there in the first place. But then you have examples like Penacony, right? The fucking Ara Nara 11-hour Genshin Sumeru quest. They only are able to pull bullshit like that because there is no fucking skip button.
I can't speak about Aranara because I never played that quest. Apparently it's so fucking long.
You guys call it optional, but you need to do it to explore the map in Sumeru. The map is locked off until you do it. All right. Your chat does not play Genshin Impact. If they're saying that it doesn't lock the map, your chat doesn't play the fucking game.
I mean, I'm as clueless
Everyone
as
that's saying no
are,
does not
no
play
idea.
the fucking game and they're just typing. Holy shit.
I have no idea.
Your chat is actually boosted.
I respect that. Yeah, exactly. If you can say that it pressures the devs to make a better story, because if they don't make a better story, people will just skip. Or it could also mean that the devs could just not give a shit about the story, because then players can just skip everything. So I feel like it can go both ways.
My opinion on it is the Wuthering Waves story has improved significantly, starting from version 1.3 to 1.4. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of people, even though they had the skip button, right? There were quite a few people that just didn't use it because the story was well paced. It was engaging. It didn't leave you, again, kind of in these extended dialogues where you're just kind of fuck, when is this shit going to end? Which I know is a sentiment that is oftentimes felt in Hoyoverse games.
Probably a subjective source if you say players felt that they didn't need to skip.
And that's the thing, right? There are going to be
know.
players, there are going to be content creators, there are going to be people, I mean, I'm seeing Fob over here, that just never give a fuck about the story anyways, right? They would skip everything in every game if they had the opportunity to. And that's the thing, right? WuWa enables those players as well. I'm pretty sure Fob, if he could, he would skip the fuck out of every single goddamn story he could. But he fucking can't, okay? He's just sitting here, just spamming left click. I was actually watching Fob's stream when he was trying to unlock all of Harmony Trailblazer's Eidolons. And he looked like he wanted to just end stream when he saw how much he had to do to unlock all 6 of Harmony TB's Eidolons. It was fucking tragic.
I feel like I kind of lost where our original argument is at this point.
The original conversation was the Hoyoverse versus Hoyoshills. You kind of
what defines as a shill? What defines as a shill? Right.
Why are we making comparisons in the first place? Isn't that just shilling?
Before I was a content creator, I have been playing gacha games since like Battle Cats, so I've been playing for like a long ass time.
I played 7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross. That was my first gacha game.
Yeah, it's like a long ass time. So like for me, if I want to play a gacha game, I want to play the gacha game that appeals to be beyond just like a singular aspect. Sure, the game could have like a ton of quality of life, but if I just don't like open world games, then it is what it is. You know, some people like
That's
turn-based, some people like the action combat, some people like XCOM, like Ghost Frontline, some people like it really just depends on what they like. Exactly, because everybody's entitled to their own decision of what game they want to play.
yeah.
Having the pointers or the arguments saying my company is better than the other company, it's either shilling or like the guy just wants to start a war.
When you have competition in the gacha space, what happens, or when you have competition in any space actually, is that products on both sides of the competition should gradually start getting better, right? Because when one company comes out with another product that is, you know, in some ways or some aspects better than others, then there is an impetus, right? There's a need to improve the quality of your product. And so when we get into a situation, right, where Genshin, Star Rail, ZZZ, whatever it is, right, they start getting better as well, then now WuWa has even more incentives for them and Kuro to improve their game and make WuWa even better too. So to me, it's about having that sense of competitive atmosphere for one company to genuinely just stop sitting on its fucking ass when it comes to quality of life and when it comes to like the care about and the quality of their game. And what that means is that can just only make the entire space as a whole better, because now there's competition, there's drive from both sides, right? And what that means is Genshin gets better, Hoyoverse gets better, and then WuWa gets better at the same time. Kind of like outlawing these comparisons, or just kind of being like, oh, every game needs to stay in its own lane. You guys can't talk about the other one or you're a shill. Then you're basically saying, hey, we don't want any of that competitive atmosphere. We don't want any of that, you know, gradual improvement. We don't want people, you know, talking about these games, highlighting what the flaws are so that we can deliver that feedback to the devs. I think that you guys are actively, in a way, making your game worse or not letting your game reach the full potential that it could.
I think the point of comparing game to game, it will always be had, because it is a game, especially a game in the same genre like Genshin and Wuthering Waves. There will definitely be the comparisons. But the point where I feel that you're a shill is because you don't really compare game to game. You're comparing company to company. It's like my company, and you use this term "my company" a lot, which is what makes me feel like you're a shill. Because if you're comparing game to game, yeah, my game does this better. Okay, sure, like they have quality of life, but it has been quite a lot of my company is the better company, and that's what makes me personally, I would cringe if I were to say my company is better.
When Hoyoverse does things like put in these obtusely long, incredibly ridiculous length stories, and they're doing it across multiple games. Thank God they didn't do it in ZZZ. Hats off to those devs. When you're seeing the same kind of trend of just a lack of respect for the player's time, and it's apparent across multiple games, right? In multiple storylines, in multiple patches. Oh, 2.6, awesome, right? It's just, you have to start looking at it from a greater overall view, right? Not just from a game level. This is a practice that they are instituting across their portfolio of games. And so talking about it at the company level, when there are multiple games that are sharing these deep flaws, I don't think there's a problem with that. And let's be honest here, right? I talk about Kuro games, but I'm mainly talking about Wuthering Waves, right? I bring up PGR occasionally. But the real focus is on Wuthering Waves, because that's Kuro's biggest game. Yep. They don't have 3 games like Hoyoverse. So kind of reducing it to like, or I guess expanding it to the company level isn't really, in my mind, the right context.
I guess it kind of does though, because like you do kind of say the company's direction is going to be applied to multiple games in Genshin and like Honkai Star Rail. For example, the story bloating, right? Waves.
Story bloating, no skip button. ZZZ has none of those.
Yeah, so that's for like Wuthering Waves against those 2 games. But because there's only one Wuthering Waves, you just say Crow Games as a company as a whole.
Yeah, right? Because obviously then, you know, perhaps the conversation's a little bit different, right? If Kuro had more games, right? If they had their own turn-based.
I feel like it still doesn't change the directive or like your agenda, where like your company is better than the other company. You could bring out points that you're competitive. It's good that if a company as a whole is more competitive because their competitors are bringing like more quality of life, therefore my company needs to match up or like do better. And this will technically, it will make gacha gaming better.
That's my meta view on the situation. Yeah,
so if all gacha games have the same quality of life improvements, the competition and everything, then the gacha gaming as a whole, it will be better. But if I were to make the point myself, it wouldn't be so much my company is better than this company. It will more be like, okay, this game has this quality of life, and if you are gonna be playing this game, then like you can see that other games don't have it. There was never a matter of if it's gonna be Kuro games or Hoyoverse or like fucking Riot games or whatever game it is, NetEase. It's just about the game itself, and I think that's the main point that I'm kind of driving at. If X game is better than Y game, that's good. But if I were to say X company is better than Y company, I think that is like I just wouldn't say it. Because it doesn't really change what a player base is getting.
I think we're kind of getting like nitpicky into semantics here. I've already explained the whole like why I call Kuro in this situation is because I mainly talk about WuWa. I don't talk about PGR that much.
Right.
WuWa is Kuro's biggest game. It's kind of like their main game, right? PGR, let's be honest, it makes like 1% of the revenue that WuWa does. So WuWa is really like the main game. It's the main competitor, right? WuWa is literally 1v3ing the Hoyoverse games. It's a cool dynamic, right? It's 1v3 and like kind of winning. It is winning in a lot of ways, right? When I talk about Hoyoverse, I don't mention ZZZ that much, right? I don't want to kick them while they're down. I mainly talk about Honkai Star Rail and I mainly talk about Genshin Impact. When there are common threads between the two games, where there are just shitty, disgusting parts that are shared in the design of both games, where there's a clear effort put on extending playtime, boosting analytics, over driving a good player experience. And I see that as a common thread between both games. The idea is that, okay, this company in a lot of ways is kind of abusing its player base. I think that Honkai Star Rail 2.6 Quest, that was a little bit abusive to the player base, right? They didn't need to make you guys suffer that much. Thank God I didn't play it. And when you're seeing that in so many different ways, when you're seeing that in Genshin with their world quests, or even some of their story quests, right? And then you're seeing it in Honkai Star Rail with their main events. And when you're seeing all of these unskippable dialogues, when you're just really trying to get the fuck on with your Sunday, just get all the event rewards and log the fuck off, and then your playtime is extended by like 3 hours because you're literally sitting there spamming the left mouse button like a human auto clicker, then you're just like, God damn, this really isn't an amazing experience. And my point of view is that, wow, maybe these players should identify or resonate, right, with the company that had plenty of opportunities to do the exact same thing, but instead they did it right. They put in design of the story, progression of events, dialogues that actually respect the player's time, right? And don't make them want to quit the game 5 minutes into the playthrough. When people are able to see a game like that and draw those comparisons, right, then maybe, again, they'll go back to the developers, right? They'll raise some feedback, and they'll say, Hoyoverse, we are tired of this garbage. Please do something to fix it. Here's a game that could have done the same exact garbage that you guys did, but didn't do it. And as a result, that gameplay experience was a lot better than what I'm seeing or experiencing right now in Honkai Star Rail or Genshin Impact.
I feel like
And then they take that feedback and make real changes that benefit the player base and, you know, make a play experience that, you know, is less like dragging your balls over glass and more like actually playing a video game.
Yeah, I feel like you hump on this story thingy quite a lot. Is that the biggest gripe you would say you have with
That's why I quit Honkai Star Rail.
Okay. If you were to say Honkai Star Rail's story is too draggy and therefore it's like a worse game, Warring Waves did it better because we have skip button and everything, it's never gonna work fundamentally because they're two fundamentally different games. It's like even if Honkai Star Rail added a skip button, if Honkai Star Rail is gonna be an open world game, then I'm still not gonna enjoy Honkai Star Rail because it is gonna be a turn-based game that I personally enjoy. So to make this argument about just because the story is bloated and therefore you should come to play Warring Waves, I think it doesn't really stand because they're just two different games.
That's not the only argument I'm making, right? That's just one piece of the pie. We're zooming in a little bit too much over here. I think it's ironic too, because didn't you say you don't like give a flying fuck about the story?
Yeah, exactly. So like,
wouldn't the skip button be fine for you? Wouldn't it improve your overall experience because you don't give a shit?
No, it's more like because I don't give a shit, it wouldn't change anything because I would still play the game as is.
It would literally just make you skip the human auto clicking.
I mean, I actually still read the story, so it's like I don't appreciate it as much, but I still read the story and watch the story, and I still have a pretty good time. Even though, yeah, 2.6 was just like, it's crazy, but yeah.
So would a skip button be good for 2.6?
Yeah, sure. It would be.
Okay.
But whether or not they
glad we buried the lead there.
Yeah, but whether or not they have a 2.6 for a skip button, it doesn't change the fact that the game itself won't really have any big clash, whether or not I will play Wuthering Waves or not.
The skip button and the story is not the only argument I'm bringing to the table. It's just one example out of the many. The fact that I've been able to make this much content about the comparisons should have you thinking, why is he able to make this much content regarding comparisons? How is it
Because,
possible in the first place? There has to be something deeply wrong with many parts of the game for me to be able to make these many videos about comparisons.
I mean, you could say you're farming.
You have to have seeds to farm. You gotta have crops to grow. You can't just farm out of nothing unless you're like a fucking freak like Tectone, right? He's able to conjure crops out of thin air. But hey, I'm just using the seeds that Hoyoverse gives me, man. Because there's a lot of fucked up shit in your guys' games. And it's easy. It's almost effortless.
And that's exactly why I feel like you're a shill.
I'm only able to make those comparisons because the one company is fucking up. If the company wasn't fucking up, I wouldn't be able to make comparisons.
Would you feel like you're not a shill then?
I'm not. I don't think I am.
So what would you think you are if you're not a shill?
I'm a person that is simply making engaging content about the game, and, you know, I see the end result, I see the end goal, I see the sun on the horizon. The gacha space can only get better if Hoyoverse starts making better changes.
Why would a gacha space be that critical on which company is the lead? Because technically Hoyoverse is the biggest company, right? They have like the biggest market share and everything. So
yeah,
it still does feel like the Wuthering Waves, or rather like the leg that you're standing on, is very dependent on highlighting how my company is good and your company is bad. It's not so much
not talking about the companies being good. It's about the things that the companies are doing is good.
Okay, wait.
The changes that the companies are making is good.
Yo, I'm gonna add Tectone.
Yeah, so first of all, Saintontas, pleasure to meet you. First time talking on Voice. Big fan of your
great to
content.
meet you as well, man.
I think it was important for me to be added to this call, obviously, because, you know, we got the rank 1 Kuro shill, and we got the rank 1 Hoyo shill, both in the same call. And then we got me, you know, an enjoyer of both Kuro and Hoyoverse.
Nah, you're Hoyo. You're a Kuro bot.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So what were the last 3 gacha games I played on my stream? Girls, Frontlines, Zone Zero, and Honkai Star Rail. I don't touch Wuthering Waves unless there's an update, because I am a gacha enjoyer, not a company enjoyer. I have loyalty to no company whatsoever. I have loyalty to good games. Yeah, what's your definition of a shill?
Comparisons by company instead of the game.
I think a shill is someone who's willing to put aside their own good mental fortitude in the pursuit of currency. I don't think a shill is someone who greatly enjoys one game or the other game. It's when they are being disingenuous to a point just to earn $1. Now, I'm going to be real. I don't think either of y'all are shills.
I like that definition.
Now, absolutely. I mean, the shill is being overused kind of like Grifter is on Twitter. The reality is both you guys are doing an excellent job of representing both games. And I just want to go ahead and tell you here live that I think you're both doing a great job. My chat, my community on Twitter was getting kind of worried about you guys. So I wanted to step in and just let you guys know that I care about y'all both very much. And I think you should be able to enjoy whichever game you want. Have you guys talked about the addendum? There are very clearly different developer teams operating on Honkai Star Rail, Zone Zero, and Genshin Impact. Have y'all talked about that?
No, yeah, but they're managed by 3 different teams. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we would all agree Genshin Impact's developer team is the worst developer team of the 4.
Absolutely, yeah.
What I don't get is why in the fuck they have not fixed that over the course of 4 years. There's been a popular Twitter thread that popped off with over 5 million views and 46,000 likes from today about how Genshin Impact doesn't feel the same due to the cohesion of the addition of Natlan. I think it really is a shame, but I think Honkai Star Rail, Zone Zero, and Wuthering Waves have been getting consistently better every single update.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit mixed on that because the thing is, when it comes to
Why?
like all those... Yeah, when it comes to all those different dev teams, right? When I see like those parallels, especially in like the pacing of the story, you know, the whole thing with Penacony and then the disaster that was 2.6, that to me is almost like Genshin Impact imprinting itself, right? Or parts of the Genshin Impact dev team imprinting themselves on the design of Honkai Star Rail. To me, it's almost like not like a dangerous circumstance, potentially it is dangerous, right? But it is something new that they introduced in 2.0, and it's something that they've carried forward, right? All the way until the end of the 2.0 version. And so as we get into like the whole what made Genshin Impact bad, what made Genshin Impact unpalatable, right? I'm seeing a lot of the same signs of that sort of progress, of all of those kind of like shitty things in Penacony. In the future of Honkai Star Rail, who knows what Amphorius is going to be like, right? Is it going to be a like 7-hour story quest each patch instead? That's the whole thing, right? It's something that has been introduced in 2.0 and it's only gotten worse as the version has gone on.
Okay, so first of all, holy shit. Saintontas, you just gave me passion to revitalize the Gacha cast and do a whole episode about this. because I just realized you are absolutely fucking correct. I would definitely be concerned with the current story direction and the HP inflation direction that Honkai Star Rail has. I don't think the game is going to be bad by any means, but I would say, would you think that it is at least cause for concern what's happening with even more dialogue bloat like 2.6 and the HP inflation for the MOC, or are you not worried about that?
I think for 2.7 it's great. I just finished 2.7 story. I think it was very well paced, especially compared to 2.6. The HP inflation, frankly speaking, there is, but because the memory of chaos buff is so strong, you technically can still clear it quite consistently because I think like 500k per debuff. So you probably can't zero cycle anymore or like as easily, but I think that you should be good as long as you follow the optimal team comps and stuff, yeah.
Good talk. Let's do Gotcha tomorrow.
Bye.
Have a good one.